In my opinion, Gundam Evolution is one of the most well-balanced games of all time. While it isn't perfect, I would say that Gundam Evolution's balance issues are dwarfed by its agency issues, and this is what I think balance patches should focus on. Characters like Ashimar and Sazabi might be equally essential to your team comp, but Ashimar has significantly more agency than Saz, because Ash has more range and Ash has the ability to fly away and create distance where distance might not otherwise exist. Pale Rider is widely considered to be the best character in the game, at least within English speaking communities, but even Pale is playing Ashmar's game because his pod can get mollied or his ult can get punched, and Ashimar is the one who reserves the right to move first in this matchup. I'll be optimistic and say that pretty much any character can go in your sixth slot, but the thing that's common about all these goofy sixth slot characters is that you wouldn't run two of them. Your fifth pick should be one of the characters on this screen, and your first four picks are pretty much always the Ninja Turtles. Ashimar goes first because he has the agency, he has the initiative over characters like Pale. Your second pick is going to be something else that can shoot Ashimar, like Pale or maybe Gundam if you think it's a map where fire bombs are really good. And then your third pick is a shield because you need the material. I mean, that's part of what Pale contributes as well. Your fourth pick after that is Dom. He cuts in line basically ahead of your second shield pick because he has an anti-shield that scales up with the number of shields that he's targeting. After that, you could run double shields if you want. Like, you could pick GM as your fifth pick. You could pick anything as your fifth pick. But, I mean, half of the game is not on this screen. Of the remaining characters, Marasai is basically fifth pick tier, but the types of shield his lasso can go through are also on this list, and it makes him contextually a little less valuable than Gundam. I don't think any characters like Ampher or Z2R would rather fight a Gundam than like a Marasai counter pick, because when you're at the skill level where you're dodging hooks, Gundam Hammer's splash damage becomes very valuable. Guntank can't block any of Marasai's abilities. Mzaku can't block any of Marasai's abilities. Mzaku can deflect Marasai's hook with his survive skill, but he only gains 10 damage worth of rage for that as opposed to 400 if he does the same to Gundam's hammer. He can also do the same to Gundam's ult or Ashimar's mollies. Z2M basically eats Molotovs with his invulnerability, so if he were good enough to theoretically replace a Sazabi in your comp, Ashimar might fall down to the same tier as Pale and Gundam on this list, in addition to Marasai probably rising up that high. And Z2M additionally benefits all of the low tier healers, since all of the health they give him will get converted into rage. Ideally, you turn this into this with a good Z2M buff. More likely, you only make him good enough to compete with Susanoo, but you get the idea. Z2M doesn't just deserve a buff, but the game deserves a Z2M buff. So let's look at how he actually works. If you've never played Melee Zaku, here's a 20-second guide. Rage M1, Tackle M1 slash M1. This allows you to do the same combo in the reverse order due to the length of the cooldowns precisely at the end of your rage. I'll demonstrate the issue with this clockwork using Unicorn's ult. Basically, Mzaku's rage is an ult like this that has 2 bullets, but see how Unicorn has way more time to fire the bullets than there are in the mag? It's fine that Melee Zaku only has 2 bullets, but he also only has the bare minimum time to do those combos twice. What will often happen in practice is that Mzaku takes so much damage that he has to use rage instantly when his abilities are still on cooldown, and the result is that he only gets one of these burst damage combos out instead of 2. This is a screenshot from the earlier clip where we can see that even if I were to add 2 seconds to his rage duration, it wouldn't be netting him another shockwave at the end of these combos anyways, so I figure he at least deserves that much wiggle room. Conveniently, Melee Zaku's survive skill already lasts 2 seconds, so we can just make it so that using Survive puts Rage Decay on pause. This gives Melee Zaku 2 seconds of suspension to catch his own cooldowns if anyone forces his rage out of him with just damage overload. Ashamar does a lot of freaking damage, so to make sure Melee Zaku is a character that doesn't just benefit from mollies, but actually deters them, he needs to be able to accept all of the damage that is being sent to him, and this suspension is how he should be able to do it. The other thing I would buff is his range, because it's like slightly less than 100 meters. I have to step over this line for it to hit, and I think it should kind of be the other way around. I think it should be slightly more than 100 meters. The last thing is that his tackle could use a few more active frames maybe, considering I literally bump into people and don't hit them in training mode. This is all I would change, and from this point forward I would just nerf Ashamar instead. There are a few odd things about Melee Zaku, like how his guard is the only shield that still slows your fuel regen down, or how his invulnerability is the only non-damaging ability in the game to, for some reason, interrupt his health regen. He's literally based off of Mei, who regens when she uses her ice cube. Next up, Ash nerfs. I think it's perfectly fine that Molly does exactly 500 damage. This means you can fire and forget on a disabled mech and it gets confirmed, but if you get a kill with Molly, you know it's not confirmed. The problem is that the rest of his projectiles all do the exact same amount of damage, and the number is convenient. Something like Charge Shot Triple Headshot does exactly 800 damage. I'd just go with -2 damage per projectile. This is just the smallest nerf that keeps the projectile damages the same and increases the number required to deal 1100 damage. Melee Zaku has 1100 health, GM has 1100 shield health, Melee Zaku's armor is a multiple of 80, and GM's health is a multiple of 80. And GM matters here because A, he could be hurt by an Mzaku buff, B, he should be able to play into Ashamar better than Sazabi does. The next character to buff is GM, because GM is hanging on to the meta by a thread. He doesn't need a buff that makes him better against Melee Zaku, because making GM better is a way we are making Melee Zaku better. We are also doing this to make Ash worse, but what we need is for GM to compete with his peers like Sazabi. This is GM's problem. Even though you can fluidly bash out of a shield block, there's a little space where damage gets through at the end. Against machine gun fire, this isn't a big deal. Against burst damage, this is a big deal. 2 out of 3 of Sazabi's abilities do not lower his shield, and he has the most HP in the game. 3 out of 3 of GM's abilities do lower his shield, and he has the least HP in the game. Guess which one of these guys is more prone to randomly exploding? Even if you're a diehard GM fan who likes playing around this weakness, you should already know that there's a tech where it comes back anyways. GM can hold the trigger while bashing, then dash to escape and shoot early. Dashing lowers your guard, so the weakness is still there, but only when there's a reward. I do really think a Melee Zaku buff is the best thing for this game, but not if it knocks GM out of the meta. The only other characters I would buff are the characters on this list. We can take Marisai out because, again, I think that's contextual. We can take Mzaku out because I just finished explaining Mzaku. And then we'll start with Methus, I guess. Methus should be able to take 2 revives at once. Snipers can do it. I don't see why Methus can't. If he takes a revive with his hands, his cable revive will snap. But really, he should be able to ult an ally while he's taking a revive. Why not? Gun Tank, for some reason, has an extra slow revive after you spend the fast ability revive. I don't know why it's extra slow. It should just be regular speed. Unicorn is probably a better support than the previous 2 characters, but he could use 1 second off of his armor cooldown, maybe. Just so that it's 10 seconds to the 15 seconds of his other ability. It just cycles better. Barbados, I'm gonna loop back around to that after I get to turn A. But Exia, on the other hand, I think I have a pretty good idea for. Firstly, he should just have 1 second less on his quick step cooldown so that it cycles better. It's about the same length of a cooldown as Unicorn's armor, so it's about the same sort of a buff. But it lets him do a quick step and then a rush, and he gets the quick step back before he gets the rush back, which means he can keep doing them in that order, as well as a few other little things. But more important would be to give him funnel marks like New Gundam. It sounds silly, but when Exia was good, it was because of his daggers. So if we want his daggers to be good, but we don't want them to overshadow the rest of his kit, all you have to do is make it so they build up marks and you pop the marks by landing a fully charged rush slash. It could be like even 15 damage per mark for up to 4 marks, and it would be pretty good. But I would make sure that it only applies to fully charged slashes. Otherwise, you get these weird circumstances where the marks disappear right before you release the charge, and you would have done more damage if you let go earlier. That doesn't sound right, so it should only be on a fully charged slash. Mahiru is always going to be sixth pick tier because shooting crowds of people all at once is kind of his thing. It's how he multiplies the damage he deals. And that means he has low trade value. So, like, playing Sazabi in a 2v2, kind of rude. But playing Mahiru in a 2v2, uh, you probably would have wanted Mahiru to die earlier in a 6v6. He's not the last character you want, and that means you don't want to have a lot of him on your team. He definitely deserves a slightly better scan, because the range is only 300 meters, which is the same as Pale Rider's fall off range. A Pale can just take 1 footstep backwards, not get scanned, and then take another step inwards, and now you have an invisible Pale. Um, you could just give him another 100 meters of range, and I would be fine with that. But you could also be more nuanced and make it so that whenever you step into the range, you get scanned during the ability's uptime. More like a sonar, which is what it's supposed to be. So that would make sense. The issue is that with how status effects are applied in this game, someone who gets scanned later might have their scan persist longer afterwards. And that's sort of a problem, and that's why Mahiru's scan is a burst. But this, like, Sazabi can take advantage of this exploit. You can look away from someone if you don't want to scan them yet, so that when you do scan them, it lasts a little longer afterwards. You would really have to edit code on like a line level to fix this issue though. What you want is you want to go find every scan effect, and then instead of letting it have its own duration, you make it copy the remaining duration on the scanning window. This would be a pretty significant Sazabi nerf, but let's skip to New Gundam. New Gundam's issue is a technical issue. His funnels kind of don't always work. Sazabi's ult is funnels. I figure if you fix one, you fix both. So, I'll take that trade off as a size main. The issue with New as well is that his health sometimes doesn't regenerate. It's just a bug. Sometimes he doesn't have natural regen, and I think it's probably funnels related. They get stuck out in the environment or something like that, and like it counts as attacking, is what I would suspect the issue is. That leaves turn A and heavy arms. Heavy arms, honestly, I think he's actually in a really good place. His weakness is that he's really slow when he revs, so he's vulnerable to headshots, but he has enough health to take a sniper headshot, and due to how much of his body is limb instead of torso, he takes reduced damage from shotguns. So it's a very interesting effect, and I think it's a creative weakness. The issue is really just that he doesn't adequately fill an anti-flyer role because his gun is too inaccurate at range. You'd think it would be good for that because flight modes don't have head hitboxes, so using a gun with no headshot damage should be something that in turn is good against, like, shooting Ashimar out of the sky. But Ash's hitbox is just kind of small in flight mode. And again, as a Sazabi main, on the first very early patch, where they reduced his shotgun spread. Dude, I got that buff and I did not want Sasabi to get buffed again. That was like, I was done. And that was maybe like the first or second season of the game. So I would just make the shots narrower on heavy arms. His health, his damage point blank, it all feels fine. He should just be a little bit better at hitting ranged targets, accurately. Turn A and Barbados are left. I'm gonna say it, but Turn A should be fucking invincible when he grabs. Turn A is really not the worst character in the game by any means, but on the Gundam Marasai totem pole, he's pretty much your worst pick. Like, imagine if, like, when Marasai shot his lasso at Turn A's grab, and Turn A deflects it with the stun immunity. What if Turn A just grabbed the freaking lasso, pulled Marasai over, and punched him in the face, right? That's the kind of risk you're taking when you use Turn A's grab. It's fine that, like, it's got twice the cooldown because, let's say Mara has a 50-50 chance of getting blocked, right? That's fair. But it's close ranged, and in exchange for being close ranged, you get very little damage immunity. The real question is like, does this screw Barb? And I don't think it does, but if it's too strong of a buff, a creative countermeasure could be to make it so Turn A isn't immune to knockback in this animation anymore. That way, if he's grabbing people near ledges, you can say batter up, and like if Barb times a swing correctly, he bounces Turn A into the ocean. Turn A can even use his ult to get back, so I think that's a pretty interesting interaction. I could also see taking 2 seconds off of Turn A's healing skill, which sounds like a lot, but Unicorn's skill was something I said to take 1 second off of, and Unicorn's cooldown is about half as much. So I think that's reasonable. Exia, I also said to take 1 second off of Quick Step, but that's about half as much. So proportionally speaking, 2 seconds for this skill is like 1 second on any other. And at 18 seconds total, you would still be getting this less often than Pale can use his pod. That leaves Barbados. I'm really tempted to give him just 20 more damage per M1. This would not add up to another multiple of 100 until he M1 someone 5 times. So mostly this is to combat people who are like they're grabbing health ups, or you're just trying to not have 1 point of regen break one of Barbados's very perfectly clean shaven breakpoints. His abilities are multiples of 50, so in that case, you still have to land 3 M1s before you get rounded up to another 100 points of health. And I think that's really fair versus 800 HP characters, for example, because maybe they grab a health up, right? Now, if you do M1 Longsword and they get away and grab health, you can do M1 M1 and it should be enough damage to kill them. That's just over 1300.